Hello, class. This is just a short video to highlight some of the big topics in this week's reading, chapters 5 through 9. I'm going to attempt to do one of these short videos every week. Whether that happens or not, we'll see, but I'm going to do at least try to do these fairly regularly throughout the semester. Hopefully it helps give you some idea, at least some guidance on what you should be looking at or the purpose of the chapters. So chapters 5 through 9 deal with the basic requirements of wills, and then moves into things like change in circumstances, changes in property, death of people, selling of items, things of that nature. But let's start with the requirement side of things. And my goal is not to go through everything here piece by piece, but rather to just kind of give you the broad strokes of what you should be focusing on. As far as testing goes, the requirements for a will, and then ultimately when we get to trusts, are going to be very important. You'll find that the requirements between wills and trusts are very similar, so learn them now and it'll serve you better in the future. As far as the requirements for a will, legal capacity, testamentary intent, and then the formalities all make up the basics for a legally valid will. Those four requirements, interestingly enough, also end up becoming the basis for challenges to a will down the road, which you'll see in later chapters. Legal capacity is just what you would anticipate. Are you a part of that legal majority? Age, military status, military service, marital status. If someone is under 18 and they get married, it gets referred to in some states as emancipation by marriage. It's just going to make sure that the person is old enough to have a will. Military service is an exception because if you're able to deploy at the age of 17, you're also able to draft a will in order to protect your assets and estate. So the other two, though, testamentary capacity and testamentary intent. Testamentary capacity is known as the sound mind. Do not get crazy associated with lack of testamentary capacity. Do not get eccentricities confused, or that kind of weird family member of yours. The reference I oftentimes make is this. If someone is going to the park every day and feeding the pigeons, and when that person dies, they leave their entire estate to the pigeons, that is not a lack of testamentary capacity. If they put in their will that they're doing this because the pigeons told them to do so, that may open up testamentary issues with testamentary capacity. The standards for testamentary capacity require that the person comprehends the actions that's taking effect, that they know the nature and the extent of the property, they know the natural objects of their bounty. Just bounty, an older word for an older word ultimately for their heirs, or the people that biologically should take under their will, and then that they can hold it all together in their mind long enough to understand it. Testamentary intent, on the other hand, just says is it the document that you intend to be your will, which is oftentimes why in wills you'll see a statement that says that this is your last will and testament. Then you go into the formalities. Formalities vary a little bit by state, but for the most part what you're going to need are two witnesses and a notary. Keep in mind that witness is witnessing the other witness signing and witnessing, and also witnessing the testator signing. And the testator is witnessing the two witnesses, and witness 2 is witnessing witness 1, and around and around and around and around, everybody is there to witness each other sign at the same time to prove that this is supposed to be the will. So go through those chapters, get a sense of those elements, and the book has some really great examples on those, and that will help as a part of it. When you move past the technical parts into changes in circumstances, specifically people and then or property and then people with the book, know the definitions of testamentary gifts. Know the difference between a devise and a bequest, a legacy, specific and general gift, residuary gifts, charitable gifts. There can be overlap. For instance, you can have a legacy, you can have a private gift that is a devise or a bequest. just to give you an example. So, but know those definitions, know those terms. That is going to be very important. The terminology in chapter 6 and 7 in particular, I think, will serve you well. Knowing redemption by extinction or redemption by satisfaction. These are just two different ways of explaining that property has gone away. Redemption by extinction is that the property is no longer in the estate, so maybe it's been sold. Satisfaction, though, means it's already been transferred. So just know those terminology, know that terminology, and it will help quite a bit. Chapter 7, again, moves from property into persons. What happens? Know about the computing of forced shares. Know what that is, what a forced share is, meaning there's a percentage that a spouse is going to get regardless. And then also know some of the different formats of that forced share. It's going to vary state by state, but most states fall in that general category of common law, which the book gets into. The changing of persons, as far as terminology that you might want to focus on, towards the end of chapter 7, it references the Cypress Doctrine, and the Cypress Doctrine allows the court to step in and substitute a charitable beneficiary for the purpose of a gift. A good example of that is the March of Dimes. At one point, they were fighting polio, and now they raise money and do support work for babies that are born prematurely. So if somebody had written a will when the March of Dimes was still supporting polio, and now it's changed, could the court come in and substitute it out for another disease that is similar to polio? Under the Cypress Doctrine, it certainly could. You have to remember that wills have a heavy equitable slant to them. They are statutory, but a court's goal is to make sure that the testator's will and that the intent of that will is met. So there are a lot of ways for courts to step in and adjust things in order to satisfy the intent of the testator. Chapter 8 and then 9 go from revocation ultimately into interpretation and construction. On the revocation side, know the distinction between a codicil and a new will. Look at the different ways of revoking a will. Ultimately, I'll give you my spiel on it, which is this: the only way to properly revoke a will is to destroy it. Mark it out, cut it up, throw it into a trash bin, light it on fire, and then spread the ashes in the ocean. You do not want an old copy of a will floating around. So revocation, burning, I think the book talks about burning and tearing and canceling it, obliterating it, destroy it. Burn it, spread its ashes in the ocean, and you'll never have to worry about it rearing its ugly head. And then finally, Chapter 9. Chapter 9 goes into what happens when there are terms in a will or clauses in a will that are maybe unclear or ambiguous. And you need to know the maxims of construction. You need to know the difference between interpretation and construction, and then know the maxims of construction. Let me just give you this as the bottom line for the two. Interpretation is where there is something in the will the court can draw intent from. There's some words in there, or there's some evidence outside the will, some extrinsic evidence that the court can say, oh, okay, they intended to take care of their grandchildren, so we're going to go ahead and make sure that all the grandchildren take under the will. Construction is where we move into an area where the court assigns meaning where they can't determine intent. And that's why there are maxims of construction. This is a dangerous area because it allows for the judge to make decisions that may be grounded solely on speculation. So look at those maxims of construction, get to know them, and also as a part of that chapter, the definitions of patent and latent ambiguities are going to be important to you. Enjoy the reading this week, and I know some of you had some struggles with the descent and distribution assignment. It's perfectly fine. It's a difficult assignment, and I'm going to go through and mark those up for you and get them back to you. But the biggest point of it is this, that you only get good at it if you do it, and the descent and distribution. Hopefully you won't have to do it in an actual firm anymore, but it gives you a good perspective on how intestacy distributions used to happen. If you have any questions, give me a call or email me, and have a good week.